The PlayStation 2 was an overwhelming success worldwide and boasted quite the lifespan for a video game console. I mean, games were still being released up until 2013. However, out of all the games in its library, there is none that resonates with me more than Katamari Damacy, or to be specific, its direct sequel. We love Katamari. Wait, Katamari Damacy had a sequel? Well, yeah, in fact it has 5 sequels, not counting spin-offs in a Korean MMO that we'll never get our hands on, but yes. Whenever people talk about this series, I'm baffled that the discussion ends at the first game, because in my personal ranking, I would place Katamari Damacy at the bottom of the list. Now, that doesn't mean it's a bad game, that's not what I'm trying to say at all, but I think all of its sequels offer something better. But today, I'd just like to focus on the first 2 games, the peak and the bottom. So let's analyze what makes the original so special, while also dissecting what I believe to be its superior yet underlooked sequel. So strap on your ducky, because we're rolling right into Katamari Damacy. Now, there's no mistaking Katamari Damacy. It's just one of those games that's so unapologetically itself. Released on March 18th, 2004 in Japan and September 21st, 2004 in North America, Katamari Damacy, despite its everything, is deceptively simple to understand. Often described as a snowball simulator, the game has you take control of the Prince of all Cosmos, who stands at a mere 5 centimeters tall. Despite his small stature, he's effortlessly pushing around this mystical orb, the titular Katamari, which always reminded me of those bumble balls made for babies. Now, the Katamari has the ability to pick up anything it contacts, so long as it's smaller than itself. As you roll into objects, you'll gradually increase in size, and anything larger than you simply bounce off of. And since it's a sphere, the Katamari exhibits momentum, so if you crash into anything, objects you've collected will break right off. Objects can also influence how the Katamari rolls, so if you start collecting a lot of longer objects, you'll have a pole vault effect. Now, the reason why you're going around and rolling up everything is to replace the stars in the sky, which were destroyed by your father, the king of all cosmos, during a bender incident? Yes, really, though he doesn't seem to feel all too bad about it. In fact, he seemed to quite enjoy it. The king, being the responsible type, places the enormous burden on your little green shoulders to roll around Earth, sending Katamaris into the sky. Under normal circumstances, this would be a monumental request, if it wasn't for the fact that it's one of the most enjoyable experiences gaming can bring you. Katamari Damacy is like those videos on r/oddly satisfying, except, you can play it. The game features rather unique controls. Instead of using the left stick to move and the right stick for the camera, both sticks are instead used to push the Katamari. It's easier to think of each stick as your left and right hand, so pressing forward on both sticks pushes the ball straight ahead. Then you simply adjust the angle for whatever direction you want to go. Pushing in the sticks causes you to perform a 180, flipping you around, and consecutively flicking the sticks in opposite directions causes you to charge and roll, which is just a dash move. However, there is a limit to this before you get tired, so it's not something you can spam. There's 2 other actions you can perform. Pressing L1 lets you get a first-person view of the scenery. This is purely for examining your surroundings, though later on you can receive a camera which lets you take photos that you can save to the memory card. If you press R1, you can jump, which simply gives you a bird's eye view of everything around you, again purely for examining your surroundings. With controls out of the way, let's review how stages are structured. Now, stages can be split into 2 categories: Make a Star stages and Constellation stages. Make a Star stages are as vanilla as they come. The king will request a Katamari of a certain size to be made in a specific amount of time. Even if you reach the requested size before time is up, the stage does not simply end, as you're encouraged to make the largest star possible. That being said, you may quit the moment you reach the goal if you'd like. If you reach the goal with ample time to spare, you'll earn a shooting star which tracks your fastest time, so repeat playthroughs are encouraged. The amount of death doesn't end there, however, as each stage can feature a royal present. Presents contain accessories you can use to customize the prince. These range from being fairly well hidden to simply being out in the open. But either way, they encourage you to thoroughly explore the map. Some even require you to interact with the environment, like crashing into a tree enough to knock down a present, or climbing to the very top of a smokestack. Then there's the constellation stages, or what I dub gimmick stages. In these stages, size is not the end goal, with one exception, but rather collecting specific objects littered throughout the map. For example, the constellation Pisces requires you to roll up as many fish as possible. There are 9 constellation stages and 10 make a star stages, so let's briefly cover each and I'll throw in some anecdotes along the way.
Make a star 1.
This stage takes place in the house, and your goal is to simply reach 10 centimeters. Since this is the first stage, there's also no time limit. Once you reach 10 centimeters, the stage ends and the king will abduct you with his signature royal rainbow. If you later decide to replay this stage, the king will add a time limit of 3 minutes, bringing it in line with the rest of the stages. Overall, it's a fairly small room with a kotatsu at its center, which you can go underneath, which I think is pretty cute.
Make a star 2.
Like the previous stage, this one also takes place in the house. Your goal is to reach 20 centimeters in 6 minutes, and unlike the previous stage, you can go outside once you reach 10 centimeters. My favorite part about this level is the eggplant garden. If you collect a bunch, the king says eggplants everywhere. This is also the first stage with a present, which the king will make you aware of during his spiel prior to starting the stage.
Make a star 3.
This stage takes place in the town. Your goal is to reach 50 centimeters in 8 minutes. This is a fairly large space to roll around in, and it can be difficult to gain size early on due to a lot of the surrounding objects being larger than you. My advice is to stay in the starting area, at least until you're big enough to roll up these cans of mackerel. On my first playthrough, I got stuck in the drain and a bunch of stuff flew off my Katamari as it just vibrated in place. This is some kind of failsafe the game does if you get stuck somewhere, because in theory, if you get smaller, you'll be able to get out of whatever predicament you're in, but it's pretty punishing. I also had a hard time getting up the stairs. Normally, you're supposed to be able to just continuously roll into a wall to climb up, but more often than not, you'll just bounce off instead. Once you're big enough, this becomes less of a problem, but it's still annoying.
Make a star 4.
We're back in the house again. This time your goal is to reach 1 meter in 10 minutes. Unlike our last visit, more of the house is accessible, including the street leading around the house once you reach 50 centimeters. Overall, I quite enjoy this stage. There's spots where objects are heavily concentrated, which makes it easy to quickly gain size. That being said, I also made a very large Katamari, so I found myself fighting the camera anytime I entered the house. Also, my Katamari was surrounded by angels at the end, which only happens when you reach the maximum size category for a map. I suppose this is a good opportunity to explain what that means. Basically, as you get larger, the screen will put up this blur effect, while also pulling back the camera to indicate you've reached the next size category. Usually these are intercepted with loading screens, but not always. What the game is trying to do is hide the fact that it needs to both unload smaller objects and also load new objects into the map. It's a pretty clever effect, and it adds to the whole dopamine rush you get while rolling. So by reaching the maximum size category, that means I've reached a point where there isn't anything more to load in. So for the house, this is as big as it gets.
Make a star 5.
We're back in town, baby! This time our goal is to reach 1.5 meters in 12 minutes. New to this stage is the lower half of the map, which is unlocked at 45 centimeters. There's this ramp you get to roll down, which is pretty fun as you gain a lot of speed. It's also around this point where you can start rolling up people. The mechanics for this are kinda tricky. If a moving object is eligible to be rolled up, they'll display this shocked emote above their head. You then need to roll into them to stun them. Once stunned, you'll be able to roll them up. If you wait too long, then they'll run away, and if you're overwhelmingly larger, you'll just bypass this and they'll be collected like a normal object. Now you may be questioning the ethics of this.
Make a star 6.
This stage takes place in the world map. The goal is to reach 3 meters in 10 minutes. This is one of the few stages that features water you can roll around in. The prince will even don some snorkel gear. There's also some police officers that will shoot your Katamari, so clearly people are starting to feel threatened by your presence. Which is interesting because there's a point where the king states that everyone on Earth will be happy to help the prince out, but I'm starting to think that's a little presumptuous. There was also a point where my Katamari got stuck again, but it did act as a good example on how the game will restore any objects that clip through the map. So they aren't theoretically gone unless you enter the next size category. and in that case, if they're smaller, then they'll likely despawn.
Make a star 7.
We're sticking around the world map once more. This time our goal is to reach 6 meters in 10 minutes. Once 3 meters is reached, we can access the city portion of the map and start rolling up cars. Or, have a car accident and get flung halfway across the map. My favorite part of this level is the beginning because there's just a line of bananas, and the king feels the need to phonetically read out banana.
Bananas.
One neat detail is that as you're creating stars throughout the game, you can actually see them back on the hub world too. That's a nice touch.
Make a star 8.
Heading back into the town again. This time our goal is to reach 12 meters in 18 minutes. You start off really small for this level, so you'll need to work hard to reach the goal. Once you reach 1.5 meters, you'll be able to explore the rest of the town. Then at 5 meters, you can begin rolling around this construction site area, located on the upper portion of the map. You can get pretty big in this stage. If you play really well, you can even start rolling up trees, homes, buildings, and even the clouds. This is also another stage that can conclude with angels circling your Katamari, so that means this is the maximum size for the town map.
Make a star 9.
It's time to see more of the world. Now we need to make a 30-meter Katamari in 18 minutes. Once 12 meters has been reached, we can start rolling around on other islands. This stage can be a pain, mostly because all of the islands are elevated, so you'll just end up falling off them more than anything. Not to mention climbing up them just tends to not work. It's too easy to get knocked off, so you'll find yourself circling back just to get where you once were. Also, if you're looking for the present on this stage, remember that certain objects unload once you reach the next size category, which happened to me here. On a more positive note, this is the first time we encounter the Jumbo Men, who are these reoccurring mascot characters in the series meant to parody Ultraman. You can see them all over the game as toys or even on the TV. It's also really satisfying to get this large. I mean, we're almost on par with skyscrapers. I wonder how much further we're able to go.
Make the moon.
This is it. This is the big one, and what the game considers to be the last level. Our goal? To create a 300-meter Katamari in 25 minutes. No problemo. Once you reach 60 meters, the entire map opens up and wow! So this is why it's called the world. Talk about a reward. Just absolute destructive bliss. I love it, man. It's so satisfying to roll around a Katamari of this size. I mean, you're just picking up these islands effortlessly. It's really amazing to go on this journey just to conclude with this sense of scale. It's pure, concentrated fun. Now, as a warning, I want to point out that it is possible to drop a present if you crash into something, which happened to me here. Had it not been defying gravity, I probably wouldn't have noticed, so just make sure to pay attention. Anyways, I managed to finish this level and collect every object that was left on the map with time to spare. And naturally, since we've gotten as big as we can, we conclude with the angels surrounding our Katamari one last time. But that's not everything the game has to offer. Now it's time to talk about the constellation stages. First up,
Make Cancer.
as previously mentioned, constellation stages have no size goal, just a time limit, with one exception. So instead, our goal this time is to collect as many crabs as possible within 5 minutes. This stage takes place in the house, though we start in the crawl space. It's here we really get an idea of how silly this game can be. We've got spiders to throw you off, but also crabs pretending to be spiders. Oh snap, this crab has got the drip. Uh-oh, this crab's armed and dangerous. This series is just full of visual humor, so keep your eyes peeled. The only difficult part of the stage is planning your route, because it's possible to miss some crabs if you don't collect them while you're small.
Make Cygnus.
Home sweet home once again. This time we're collecting as many swans as possible in 6 minutes. But here's the catch. They haven't hatched yet, so they're all in eggs. Sounds easy, right? Well, not all the eggs contain swans. Sometimes they contain ducks. Sometimes they're just eggs. And it's completely random, so you're better off just collecting every egg you see. See why I call these gimmick stages? This level is tricky to navigate as well. You start off on the roof, and if you decide to return here later, things can get pretty narrow if you don't know better. What you're supposed to do is continuously roll up these ladders, but given how unreliable this move is elsewhere, the thought never really crossed my mind. In all fairness, it does work consistently for ladders, so it must be deliberate that it sucks elsewhere? Anyways, I like this added verticality. It creates a sense of exploration that's completely unique to this stage. What I don't like though are these mouse traps littered all over that just fling you across the map. They're only here to waste your time.
Make Corona Borealis.
This time we're rolling around the town, collecting as many crowns as possible in 8 minutes. This one is pretty standard. If an object is wearing a crown, you aren't able to simply take it off. You need to be big enough to roll up the object wearing it as well. Also, if you haven't caught on at this point, each stage has its own unique design for the Katamari, with the constellation stages being some of the most distinct.
Make Gemini.
We've returned to the world map, and this time we have 10 minutes to roll some twins.
Twins.
Now this doesn't simply extend to people, but animals, plants, and even things like household objects. The twins are denoted by their names in the lower left corner, so unless it states older or younger twin, then the object doesn't count. And obviously for it to count towards your score, you need to roll up both. Triplets, quadruplets, and quintuplets don't count. The king just wants you to know that. In my opinion, this is the hardest stage to master, mostly because you need to be very thorough to ensure you've collected both twins. I advise not rolling up people until you're large enough to bypass the stun, because if one of them runs away, then they're gone for good. They don't respawn.
Make Taurus.
Actually, I take it back. This is the hardest stage. Unlike the previous 4 constellations, this one shakes things up quite a bit. Your goal is to roll up a cow. Just one. Ideally of the large variety. Sounds easy, right? Well, there's a lot of cows here, and the definition of cow is stretched pretty thin. A pylon? Well, it has a cow print, so it's a cow. A sign? Well, there's a cow on it, so it's a cow. Cowman! That's definitely a cow. Oh, milk carton. That's a cow. Once again, this level takes place on the world map, and you're generously given 10 minutes to figure this mess out. To be fair, there's nothing stopping you from collecting a pylon and calling it a day. It's when you try to take this level seriously where the difficulty lies. Because to roll up the biggest cow, you'll have to grow your Katamari quite a bit, which requires you to avoid everything cow and cow adjacent. This can be out of your control too, because like I've previously mentioned, the Katamari has momentum and easily bounces off anything that decides to graze it ever so slightly.
Make Ursa Major.
If you enjoyed the last level, then you're gonna love this one too. This time, instead of a cow, we need a bear. We've got all the bears. Teddy bears, polar bears, bears, whatever this is. Bear carvings, bear statues, bear signs. Oh, can't forget Bearman either. They're all unmistakably bears. This level takes place on the town map, and like Taurus, you're given 10 minutes to find the cub of your dreams. I feel like this map is more adjusted for this style of gameplay, so I found it easier than Taurus. Honestly, these 2 levels would have been a lot more tolerable if you didn't have to go through multiple loading screens and a bunch of king dialogue just to retry. But I digress.
Make Pisces.
Once again, we're hanging out downtown. This time we're rolling up as many fish as possible in 5 minutes. This is yet another standard objective, but I do enjoy it. Fish can be hard to catch because they're pretty fast, and some of them aren't visible until they're jumping out of the water, but I don't know, I just like this one. I think it's because the stage is concentrated in an uncommon area of the town map, so it feels more memorable.
Make Virgo.
Alright, this is the yikes one. Once again, we're rolling in the town, and our goal is to roll up as many maidens as possible in 10 minutes. Yeah. The best part is the song that plays during this stage is called Lonely Rolling Star, so they knew what they were doing. The king lays it on pretty thick too, making some questionable remarks. Honestly, this level is just funny. At the start, the girl knocked my Katamari down the stairs. That had to be intentional. One cool thing I noticed is that there's a witch girl riding a broom with a black cat, which totally has to be a Kiki's Delivery Service reference, right? Like, look, it's Gigi.
Make the North Star.
Last but probably least, it's time to make the North Star. This is the exception I was talking about, because in this stage, there's no time limit. The catch is that you also don't know the size of your Katamari either. The goal is simple though. Roll around the world to make a 10-meter Katamari. When you think you're around 10 meters, you simply press square to exit the stage and see the results. It's not exactly riveting, nor is it offensive, it's just fine. Now, in terms of level order, the game is somewhat non-linear. Each time you clear a Make a Star stage, the next difficulty is unlocked. Except for Make a Star 7, which requires you to clear either Gemini, Ursa Major, or Pisces first. Now, constellation stages are unlocked after each Make a Star stage, but they're also not required to see the credits, so in that regard, it's up to you on how you want to pace yourself. That all said, there's still a few more things to do after you make the moon. During the credits, there's a bonus stage where you can roll around the Earth and pick up all of its countries. If you reach the maximum size category on Make a Star 4, 8, and Make the Moon, you'll unlock their Eternal variants, which completely removes the timer while also randomizing the music. Additionally, when replaying a stage after completing the game, the prince's cousins will now appear and can be rolled up, which grants some unique dialogue from the king, usually just finding them disturbing. This is a good segue into the collection, which catalogs every object you've rolled up. This had to be a localization nightmare, but they actually went out of their way to write little blurbs for each object. And they're honestly fairly entertaining. But yeah, if you wanted to, you could totally make your goal to complete the collection, and that would keep you busy for some time. The game already encourages replayability, and objects have fixed locations, so at some point you could collect everything if you were persistent enough. It feels silly to discuss the presentation only now, but I felt it's important to understand everything else before you can truly appreciate what's going on here. Obviously, this game has a very unique art style. Low poly 3D models with very simple, low resolution textures. If there's anything I learned from art class, it's KISS. Keep it simple, stupid, and this embodies that perfectly. Now, in the spirit of full disclosure, I am running this on an emulator, so I've increased the internal resolution to 1080p. But because the textures are intentionally pixelated, I think it just upscales beautifully. That being said, the game still looks pretty nice at its native resolution. Now, given how many objects are on screen at once, this had to have been a happy accident considering the hardware limitations, but it works wonderfully. You could even say it's timeless. You can still see this visual style influencing indie games to this day. It's iconic, but nowhere near as iconic as the game's soundtrack. Now you have to understand, it's the mid-2000s. Yes, anime and Japanese culture had entered the West, but it was nowhere near as mainstream as it is now, and I feel like Katamari Damacy, even to some small degree, played a role in making that happen. There was a time where you couldn't release a game like this. That's why we have all these games that never left Japan, or if they did, they were reskinned for our dumb American taste. But Katamari dared to be itself, and it paid dividends. This is a roundabout way of saying all the music is in its native language, and it was the first time I had heard anything like it. Now, I have this weird thing where even when listening to quote-unquote normal music, I don't hear lyrics as words, but rather as an instrument. So 9 out of 10 times I can't understand what people are saying unless it's blatantly obvious. So I think that made the culture shock of Katamari's soundtrack so easy to adjust to, because it never mattered to me. Or, you know, it's just the fact that it's incredible. This soundtrack covers a lot of ground. Unlike most games that would be scored to suit the environment, Katamari Damacy goes the every song could be an anime OP route, such as its two most iconic tracks, Lonely Rolling Star and the main theme, Katamari on the Rocks.
It's my way. It's my way.
There are exceptions, naturally, along with some running themes to add cohesion. For example, a lot of songs will use synthesized voices, such as the King's theme, Fugue number 7777. Wanda Wanda, and You Are Smart. Then there's the more jazz-inspired tracks, like Roll Me In, Gin and Tonic, and Red Red Roses. And Que Sera Sera.
I know you love me. I want my life. Let's roll.
This track is interesting to me because it's entirely in English, performed by Charlie Kosei of Lupin III fame. Coincidentally, or perhaps not, is the spectacular Katamari of Love, performed by Shigeru Matsuzaki, who would later be a vocalist on 2019's Lupin III: Prison of the Past. There's also the loud and in-your-face Katamari Mambo. This song goes really hard later on. Such a bop. Then there's the more subdued, introspective pieces like Walking on a Star that plays in the hub world. Or my personal favorite from this game, The Moon and the Prince. If there's one consistent thing that makes me think Katamari, it's the frequency of male vocalists harmonizing. If you pay close attention, it crops up all over the series. The only song I don't vibe with is Cherry Tree Times. Sorry, I just can't tolerate these children singing. This song plays on Make Taurus too, which is just the cherry on top of that grueling experience. But yeah, if you like what you hear, I encourage you to give the soundtrack the time and respect it deserves, especially with a pair of headphones on. These are some really long compositions too. I mean, stages in this game will extend well beyond the 10-minute mark, so to compensate for this, the music in stages will seamlessly alternate between the standard track and a variant with the vocals removed. Which helps the music stay fresh. I also have to give a shout out to the sound design. You can just tell they had a lot of fun with this. Most objects have a unique noise that plays upon being rolled up. Especially humans. They make some of the most ridiculous sounds.
Hey! What's happening? Ooh, stop it!
One of my favorite touches is the decision to use record scratching to represent the king's voice. The pitch will change depending on his mood, too. I just think it's a really creative way to convey his tone. But yeah, it's time we talked about the elephant in the room, the king. I'm sure you already have an idea on what the king is all about. He's a very eccentric character. He means well, but can come off as rude and lazy. I mean, after all, you're in this mess because of him. I don't see the king rolling the Katamari. Allegedly, he was trying to make Ursa Major and Taurus, but the last animal quote-unquote got away. So he makes it your job to find a replacement. Yeah, that checks out. I mean, vending machines are awfully fast. Probably his greatest sin, though, is being annoying. He takes up precious screen real estate anytime he decides to pop in, and this happens a lot. He's always got something to say. But in all honesty, I love him. I can see His Highness being a huge turnoff for most people, but I don't know, I've always liked the king. He's that asshole kind of cool. Like, he talks a big game, but when he enters the ring, he puts on a show. His relationship with his son is pretty unhealthy though. He's constantly berating his small size or teasing him about how he got him a present, but carelessly lost it. Every single time. But throughout the game, I feel he grows to respect the prince, probably because you start to remind him of himself. But trust me, you do not want to disappoint him. If you fail at a stage, not only do you have to live with your own failure, but the king makes you know it. He is just brutal. But at the same time, it feels equally rewarding when you leave him impressed. It's a very interesting dynamic, and I can't say I've seen anything like this elsewhere. He also looks like he's in the wrong game, but given what we've been dealing with here, that's just par for the course. Since there's the king and a prince, there's naturally a queen as well, though she has an extremely limited presence, only appearing in cutscenes and some passing dialogue from the king. Speaking of cutscenes, this game has a very memorable opening. It's quite the psychedelic ride, and while not telling you anything about the game, it is fun to look at. I always like the beginning where the lights on the king's head go up and down in time with the music.
Katamari Damacy.
It's so cool. There's also this side story following the Hoshino family, but I never found it all that interesting. The son, Matsuo, notices the stars vanishing from the sky after seeing it on TV, but his mom neither believes him or seems to care at all. His sister Michiru is normally silent unless you make a constellation. Then she says the iconic,
Oh, I feel it. I feel the cosmos.
and talks about the constellation.
Cancer came scuttling back. So yummy.
I don't know, man. It's something, I guess. Eventually, they go to see their father, who's an astronaut, only for him to tell them that the space launch is called off because the moon has disappeared. Then we make the moon, and oops, I guess we rolled them up. Now they're in space. The end. Yeah, it's nothing to write home about, but there's also this ending cutscene to complement the opening, which is equally as surreal and fun to look at. Just look at the prince go. The only other mode left to discuss is multiplayer, which you can access over on the Space Mushroom. Every time you complete a stage, one of the prince's cousins will show up here. This is also the only area of the game where they're playable, so pick your favorite and find a buddy to go head to head with. Now unfortunately, on PCSX2, there is a bug preventing this mode from working when using the hardware renderer, so please excuse the change in resolution. The goal is simple: make a larger Katamari than your opponent. The charge and roll is also enhanced in this mode, allowing you to collide with your opponent to knock off any objects they've collected. It's a decent distraction, but nothing worth going out of your way for. I do think it's interesting that you're competing for the king to acknowledge you as the true prince, as he's apparently forgotten what his own son looks like. That's messed up, man. Also, you can drop pans on the loser, which is funny. And yeah, that's Katamari Damacy. What a ride, man. My biggest gripe is the fact that there's only 3 maps and the lack of variety. Due to how the Make a Star stages are structured, only 3 of the 10 feel like fully cohesive experiences since you're able to see the full extent of the map, while the rest feel like padding. It would be like if you rode a roller coaster but you had to stop a third of the way, only to restart and be stopped again and again until you finally can go the whole ride without any interruptions. This would be less of a problem if the maps had more variety, but sadly they don't. The constellation stages mix things up a little bit by tweaking the objective and object layouts, but I don't think they go far enough to truly stand on their own. I also dislike how often the Katamari has a hard time moving against the environment. It's really frustrating how easy it is to get stuck and knocked around. Despite all that, the overall experience far outweighs the negatives. Katamari Damacy is still a lot of fun, and it's clear why this game is such a beloved cult classic. Like, did you know that Cartoon Network's Chowder did a total homage to this game? They even made their own legally distinct version of Katamari on the Rocks. Now, according to series creator C.H. Greenblatt's blogspot, the King of the Sky was even directly inspired by the King of All Cosmos. The Simpsons game also featured Milhouse parodying the King of All Cosmos, going under the alias Mr. Dirt. I can't really explain why he's called that, he just is. The King and the Prince also appeared in a Mad sketch as well, with the Prince being sued for rolling up everyone's stuff into his Katamari. Also legally distinct Sonic and Crasher here too. Or take that Travelers commercial that's undeniably Katamari influenced as well. Like, wow, this is horrifying in reality. Clearly, Katamari Damacy didn't go unnoticed and is worthy of its success. So the question now is, how do you follow that up?
Oh, yeah!
Released on July 6th, 2005 in Japan, In September 20th, 2005 in North America, We Love Katamari is what any sequel ought to strive for. It keeps what worked from the original, polishing what was already established, while also adding so much more. This is also where my story with the series starts, as We Love Katamari was actually my first Katamari game. This likely plays a role in my bias, so we'll circle back to that line of thought, but man, do I remember the amount of confusion I had when this was first described to me. It was either late elementary or early middle school, but I would have been around 10 years old, and I actually heard it from word of mouth by my friend Don. Given our age and how niche Japanese media was at the time, I can't imagine the odds of this happening, but I digress. He had received a demo disc from the official PlayStation magazine, which just so happened to feature We Love Katamari. After he played it, he came to school the next day telling me and our other friend Philip all about it. I remember being so confused because when I heard the word Katamari, my brain went, calamari? So as he was describing the game to me, I thought it was about rolling this disgusting fishball all over a table as it slowly gets all dirty, picking up everything that's lying around while the Burger King shoots lasers at you from his eyes. While that is true to some degree, it wasn't exactly right. Being intrigued, we ended up hanging out over the weekend and it all finally made sense. And man, this demo is awesome. I mean, it even has co-op, which is a new addition to the series as well. The demo features 2 levels, the school and the flower stage. These both deviate a bit from the final game, mostly in object layout and music choice, which was actually jarring to me when I played the retail game, just from the sheer amount of time I spent playing this demo over and over again. I even managed to convince Don to let me borrow the demo disc because I was just so enamored. I could not get enough of it and I just had to convince my mom to let me get it. I was really lucky to find it at GameStop, considering how rare this game is, so despite being used, I'm pretty sure I paid full price for it. And I say pretty sure because I no longer have the case since it was damaged from a house fire, so the majority of my old games I just have loose in this binder. But yeah, that's where it all started. It was love at first sight. Now for people coming right off of Katamari Damacy, this game makes an excellent first impression in what it's trying to achieve and the kind of tone it's trying to set. So I thought it would be fun to go on that journey together, step by step. After creating a save file, we're greeted with a new opening cinematic, which is now a series staple at this point. We see all kinds of stuff. Red pandas, the Hoshino family, and even the Jumbo Men. Before I knew what their names were, my friends and I would just call them French robots. After this, we'd see the title screen, which is actually interactable. If you wait long enough, then the text will actually change. Once we hit start, we jump right into a summary of the story up until this point. This part is just hilarious. It's done with this professional sounding narration, yet at the same time, completely self-aware.
Such is the great cosmos, and the king that rules over it is marvelous to behold. Except for the one time that he destroyed all the stars in the universe. No big deal, really.
It's brilliant. I honestly feel guilty not showing the full clip, but we got a lot of ground to cover, so we learn that due to the success of Katamari Damacy, which is apparently canon in-universe as a video game, that the king is now a superstar and is being inundated by his fans.
I want to meet the king.
I think he should be bigger. The king is so cool. I want to roll up more stuff.
With his ego stroked, what else is the king to do but to give his fans what they want? And so, he decides it's time
To do his thing.
I love that part. I'm just as excited as that guy. I also like how they take a jab at the fact that all the stars created during the last game are definitely not enough to replace our whole solar system. So yeah, this is a sequel to a game that is self-aware that it's a sequel. Genius. After this, we're dropped for a brief chat with the king, who is reminiscing on how he destroyed the stars and pondering what fans like the most about him. Concluding it must be his chin. Sounds about right to me. As you can see, His Highness is sporting a new, groovy look. His voice sample has changed too. It's still a record scratch, but the sample that's used is new. After chatting, we're dropped in the Select Meadow, which acts as the main hub. We then notice that someone is eager to speak with us, the soccer boy. oh dear, he's forgotten how to play Katamari Damacy and wants us to help him remember. And this, my friends, is the formula of how stages are handled this time around. A fan will have a request. You bring up the request to the king. The king will harshly deny the request, but when all hope is lost, the fan will speak up with some sort of compliment. And just like that, he folds like a lawn chair, completely changing his attitude. It's funny every time. Like he equates forgetting Katamari Damacy like forgetting the meaning of life. Then the fan is like, "You're so cool, Mr. King." And he's like, "We need to remember how to play right now." Now we're in the tutorial, and right away, wow, big difference on how the Katamari feels. The control scheme is identical, but movement is way more responsive. The Katamari stops on a dime and overall is way faster. It just feels really good to roll now. The tutorial is a bit more fleshed out this time, allowing you to actually roll up objects and climb walls, which now works properly. Hooray! The look and jump are fleshed out a bit more, so now you can appreciate the environment even better than before. And oh, look at that! We're rolling on the king's head. As we remember how to play the game we just completed, the king drops us an objective. We need to roll up our cousin, Ace, in order to complete the stage. And honestly, despite being a tutorial, this feels like a legitimate first level. I mean, the map is unique along with the objects that appear here. Anyways, once we roll up Ace, the king congratulates us and warps us out with his new royal rainbow. At the results screen, the soccer boy tells us he's grateful for the refresher course, and as a token of gratitude, he lets us keep the Katamari. Humbled, the king is unsure what to do with it, but then realizes it would be best to pop it out into the cosmos, turning the Katamari into a planet. Yep, this time we're making planets. Side note, I love how the king's hand crawls in and out of frame when he reviews the cousins you've rolled up. The squeaky noise is just icing on the cake. Now we're back at the select meadow and oh, look, there's Ace again. Oh, we can play as him too. Yep, now cousins are no longer restricted to multiplayer and can be used freely in single player. So in addition to the returning presents, each stage features one or more cousins you can collect. Long as you keep them rolled up in your Katamari, they'll become playable. Every stage will denote what presents/cousins you haven't collected while speaking with the associated fan. It's over here at the top left, so it's much easier to keep track of now. In Katamari Damacy, the only way of knowing what stage you missed a present on was dependent on whether or not the king made mention of one, so this is a far more efficient solution and gives opportunity for the king to talk about something else. So wait, back up. There's two cousins in the tutorial? What if we did the tutorial as Ace? Would that mean we roll up the prince? Not quite. Instead, we'll find Slip, who looks like the prince if he were made out of cardboard. Slip is one of the many new cousins in this game, which the king will denote as second cousins. But yes, all of the cousins from the first game return here as well, with many featuring slight redesigns. So let's keep chugging along. The next fan we speak to is the Rainbow Girl. Oh hey, we're able to change the music now. That's cool. Oh, I see. She wants to see the royal rainbow for herself. Unfortunately, the king is hungry and not very interested until she mentions how striking he is. Then he's like, oh, she's right. Rainbows are great. Eating is for chumps. And then we're off to the first as large as possible stage, which acts as this game's equivalent to the Make a Star stages. Our goal is to make a 15 centimeter Katamari in 3 minutes, and wow, what a step up in presentation. We're rolling around a house again, but man is this level design such an improvement. There's a lot of areas to explore, especially vertically, like one moment you'll be on the coffee table, but then you might decide to hop up on the couch, which will then finally lead you to this cabinet. And these stages are just filled to the brim with objects. But unlike the first game, their placements feel a lot more natural. In Katamari Damacy, objects just kind of defied gravity and stood straight up. They were also placed around in patterns, so it just felt somewhat sterile. But here, everything just makes sense. They have this sense of naturalness, and it just lends itself to far more interesting level design. It also means there's a lot less time spent trying to find things to help you get bigger. That's not to say it's brainless, it's just better paced. Another change is the inclusion of multiple starting locations. This makes replaying levels feel a little more fresh, since your initial progression through a stage will have some variety. Naturally, some starting locations are better than others, so this can be viewed as a double-edged sword for speedrunning purposes, but casually I think this is a welcome addition. You can now restart a level without exiting back to the hub, so if you prefer one starting location over the other, you can repeat this until you get the one you want. Anyways, we complete the level, she sees the royal rainbow and gives us the Katamari so we can make another planet. This time, we're greeted with our first cutscene and oh, is that the king of all cosmos as a child? Oh wow, his dad is very traditional. Oh man, no wonder he turned out the way he did. So instead of the typical approach of tying the narrative to gameplay, We Love Katamari instead chose to explore the king's origins, his upbringing, how he met the queen, and eventually how he took on the crown. It's a far more engaging story than the Hoshino family, which I just found boring, but this is just great. It's dramatic, but also has its share of levity, and it's done without a single piece of dialogue. I also like the king's reaction to it as well. He's like, it's a storyboard, but the pictures move, and there's music. An extreme storyboard, that's what it is. It's called a movie? What a dork. So at this point, the gameplay formula has been established. Fans show up with requests, you fulfill those requests to make planets, then more stages open up and you complete them in whatever order you like. There is an overarching goal, however, and that is to roll up the sun. Now, who would make such a request, you ask? Why, this cute little doggy, of course. What, you didn't know Katamari Damacy was popular with animals? When you attempt to roll up the sun, you'll quickly find out that you're way too small. This sets you up for the main objective, creating as many planets as it takes until you're large enough to roll up the sun. On top of creating planets, you're still able to create shooting stars if you're fast enough. But there's also an additional celestial body you can create, satellites. Satellites are bonus arrangements of a stage, featuring a different objective. Using as large as possible one as an example, the satellite variant has you making a 15 centimeter Katamari as fast as you can. So basically, the moment you start rolling, a timer will start, and once you've hit the requested size, that's it. Now this might sound the same as the normal objective, but these as fast as possible variants will feature different object layouts, a different starting location, or even a different starting size. So in a stage where you normally start out at 10 centimeters, ending with 3 meters, the satellite variant may start you off at 1.5 meters. Other satellite variants will have unique objectives or additional difficulty levels. So like Katamari Damacy, let's review every stage and I'll offer my own anecdotes along the way. Since we covered as large as possible 1 already, let's hop right into
As large as possible 2.
This request comes from Lazy Bones, who wants to see a big Katamari before he falls asleep. Your goal is to reach 40 centimeters in 6 minutes, and once again, we're starting in the house, though now it's completely overrun by cats. Once we reach 20 centimeters, we can roll outside. However, once you leave the house, you can't go back in since you drop right off the balcony. Overall, this is a very cute stage. Like, one of the first things you'll run into is this little picnic setup. But yeah, I really dig the vibe of the outside area. It's this cozy slice of a Japanese suburb. The satellite variant of this stage is as fast as possible too, where you start off at 30 centimeters and need to reach 50. In other words, we're just bypassing the first half of the normal variant and cutting straight to the outside area. One subtle addition is that any new object you've rolled up will be shown in rainbow text, while any object you've already collected will be shown in the standard white. This is helpful for those that enjoy completing the returning collection, as you can now tell at a glance if you picked up something new.
As large as possible 3.
This request comes from Grandpa, who wants to try Katamari Damacy for himself before letting his grandson play it. Your goal is to reach 3 meters in 10 minutes, once again starting in the house. I do want to point out that the game does make an effort to diversify this area, despite being repeated as the starting location for a third time. For example, the couch is totally gone and in its place is an ironing board along with a fridge. Oh, and don't forget that trademark sense of humor. This time, once we reach 50 centimeters, we can start rolling around the town. The town is fairly condensed. There's a lot of places of interest, such as a farm, a railroad where a train will run through, and a recess area outside of the school, which even has a swimming pool. The satellite variant of the stage is as fast as possible 3, where you start off at 1.5 meters with the goal of reaching 3 meters. This is where the time attack stages start to get interesting, because you're already at a size where you can roll up people.
As large as possible 4.
This request comes from Grandma, who's just bored and looking for something exciting to do. Your goal is to reach 12 meters in 12 minutes, this time starting outside of the house. Once you reach 3 meters, you're able to start exploring the city. This layout is already a huge improvement over Katamari Damacy. All of the changes in elevation are handled by hills and ramps, so even if you were to fall off, it's a lot easier to get back up. Once you're large enough, I like returning to the starting area so I can effortlessly pick up everything there. It's as satisfying as ever. The satellite variant of this stage is as fast as possible 4, where you start off at 10 meters with the goal of reaching 20 meters. You're already quite large at this point, so if you dash around a lot, you should have no problem making a good time.
As large as possible 5.
This request comes from the bird and elephant, with the bird requesting that they simply want to be bigger. Your goal is to reach 500 meters in 17 minutes, this time starting off in the town. Once you reach 12 meters, the world is your oyster to roll around in. This stage is this game's equivalent of Make the Moon from Katamari Damacy. It is also the last of the sequential as large as possible stages. Yep, we're here already. To put it simply, this stage is incredible. It takes everything good about Make the Moon while also reaching for even greater heights. You can get really, really big on this stage. Like over 4 times the size of Make the Moon, which capped at a little over 800 meters. It truly feels like the world this time too, because the map is just littered with familiar landmarks. You've got the Statue of Liberty, the Great Wall of China, the Egyptian pyramids, Big Ben, and much, much more. Yeah, you'll have to suspend your disbelief because none of these locations are actually this close to each other, but it's like strolling through a theme park of world culture. Except, of course, you're rolling a ball of destruction. I wonder if any countries find this offensive. One cool thing about this stage is any cousin you've collected will also appear in this level, all with their own little spot they take refuge in, typically associated with their personality or appearance. They actually do this in other stages as well, but not to this degree. It's also possible to roll up the King of all Cosmos, which gives us a bit of insight into how it feels to be rolled up, stating that it's an incredible feeling, happy but also dreamy, the best even. On subsequent playthroughs, it's also possible to roll up the Queen as well. At the results screen, the King mentions that it's amazing inside the Katamari. Oh wait, we can't talk about it. Nothing to see here, move along. Is being rolled up by the Katamari like, you know... The satellite variant of this stage is as fast as possible 5, where you start off at 2 meters with the goal of reaching 1000 meters. This sadly doesn't feel all too different from the normal version of the stage, considering you start out at basically the same size, but there are some minor differences in object arrangement. So if you haven't caught on yet, all of these stages take place on the same map, which means that unfortunately the whole roller coaster stops every third of the way just to restart problem I had with Katamari Damacy is still present. However, I do feel that they're different enough to keep things interesting. You could make the argument that it's lazy, because Katamari Damacy had 3 maps, but you can't overlook that these are all interconnected to create one massive map. It's kind of like an open world if you think about it, which is pretty ambitious for the time. But if you think getting bigger is all that We Love Katamari has to offer, buckle up, because this is where things get really interesting.
Underwater.
This request comes from the Floaty Boy, who is learning how to swim and wants to practice by rolling the Katamari underwater. Your goal is to reach 80 centimeters in 6 minutes, taking place on a new map, which is some kind of pond. Naturally, this stage takes place underwater, which even the fan notes that we couldn't do in Katamari Damacy. Now, because we're rolling underwater, the Katamari experiences some slowed momentum, especially as it descends, but rolling on the floor is about the same. To put it simply, the theming is perfect here. This is what Pisces wishes it could be. Anything and everything you could find underwater is present, even things that shouldn't be. There's also fishing lines strewn about, so if you get hooked, you'll be unable to move for a bit as you try to break free. So be careful. Once you're large enough, it's actually possible to reach the surface, which is useful for locating the duck that's carrying the present. Overall, I really like this stage. The beginning can be challenging, but once you reach a certain size, it's really fun to dash around and just get as big as you can. The satellite variant of this stage is as fast as possible, where you start off at 30 centimeters with the goal of reaching 60 centimeters. Nothing too much to note for this, but since the beginning of the stage is the hardest part, getting a good time definitely requires you to plan out an efficient route. Now, earlier I mentioned that the last stage, as large as possible 5, was the last sequential as large as possible stage, and this is what I meant by that. So while this stage is categorized the same, it doesn't follow the pattern of getting bigger than the last stage, so it instead finds its identity in its theme or gimmick. You're still getting as big as you can, but there's an additional layer of challenge, and I find it more engaging than the constellation stages in the first game.
Flowers.
This request comes from the Ikebana teacher, who wants to know what Nouvelle Ikebana is. I guess that means rolling a Katamari around a garden. Your goal is to collect as many flowers as possible in 5 minutes. Once again, a constellation-styled objective done way better on a unique map with far stronger theming. There's all kinds of flowers to roll up, even a Mario-styled Venus flytrap. There's also an abundance of mythical creatures too, like fairies, a centaur, and even the 7 dwarves make an appearance. Though if you roll them up, nothing happens. Even the king is disappointed. There's also this woman that pops out of the lake, but when you roll her up, you find out it's actually God? Whoa, even the king is stumped. This stage is really fun. If you recall from earlier, this is actually one of the stages from the demo, so I'm very well acquainted with this one. Brings back good memories every time. The satellite variant of the stage requires you to roll up 567 flowers as fast as possible. I think this is one of the better examples for a time attack stage, since the change in objective does affect how you play this stage due to the shift in priority of speed instead of just thoroughly rolling up every flower, which is far more meticulous.
Clean up.
This request comes from the fussy mom, who wants you to clean up her son's room. The goal is to roll up all 100 objects as fast as possible. This is actually one of the weaker stages in the game, however it is designed in such a way that you can't just aimlessly roll up all the objects. You need to plan your route to roll up the smaller objects first so you're big enough to get the rest. It's not bad, but it's not something you can't find elsewhere. The map is unique though, this time taking place in a bedroom. This is also one of the few stages without a satellite variant, but I would like to take this opportunity to explain Stardust. When you complete a stage that you've cleared previously, you'll be presented with a decision. Destroy your old planet to create a new one, or destroy your current Katamari to create Stardust. Stardust is another celestial body you can create. This was actually a thing in the first Katamari Damacy, but served no real practical purpose until this game, where it now counts as an object you can roll up during the Roll Up the Sun stage. So when it comes to replaying stages, even if you do worse than your previous attempt, it's still worth sacrificing the Katamari to create Stardust.
School.
This request comes from the substitute teacher, who has a classroom full of kids that love Katamari Damacy and wants the king to pay a visit. Your goal is to reach 1.5 meters in 5 minutes, taking place on a new map, the school. This is also the first stage that was featured in the demo, so this stage holds a very special place in my heart for making me fall in love with the series to begin with. Honestly though, it's really just another as large as possible stage with no real gimmick. The setting is what makes it memorable, rolling around on desks, picking up school supplies, backpacks, and then eventually, students. If you do really well, you can roll up the walls dividing the classrooms, which at that point you can just dash between them and just pick up everything really quickly. It's so satisfying. Definitely therapeutic for anyone that hated school. Is that Mob Psycho? The satellite variant of the stage requires you to roll up all of the students as fast as possible, which completely recontextualizes the stage. The object layout is totally different as well. You also start off big enough to roll up people, so the challenge is just being as efficient as you can. I really appreciate that it takes place during a sunset, which just adds to the mood of the school day ending. One of my favorite satellite variants. It honestly feels like it could have been the main stage. One thing I'd like to point out is that second cousin Huey only appears on the satellite version of this stage, so some cousins are exclusive to certain stage variants. Oh, and fun fact, this is the same school featured in the town. Like look, you can see the recess area from the windows.
Sumo.
This request comes from the Mini Sumo, who wants the king to help him become stronger. The goal of this level is to defeat your opponent, Komosubi in sumo wrestling. How do you do this? Why, by eating of course. You have 5 minutes to roll up as much food as possible until you're large enough to knock Komosubi out of the ring. Any food you collect will make the Mini Sumo put on weight, with larger foods contributing the most weight. Inedible objects do not contribute at all, so you need to focus on sustenance. And before you ask, people do not count as food. This level is one of my favorites, despite how easily this could be construed as fetish material, but it's handled so comically I really doubt that was the intent. The stage does recycle the town map, but because it's recontextualized with the gimmick, it still feels fresh. Getting large in this stage is very satisfying too. Once you're big enough, you'll be able to pick up freezers, vending machines, and even food stalls, which significantly contribute to your size. It's just ridiculous how much you can tower over your opponent. Now this stage is unique in that it features 3 difficulty levels, with the first 2 generating satellites and the hardest generating their own planet. For medium, your opponent is Ozeki, And for hard, your opponent is Yokozuna. Obviously, since your opponent is getting larger, the difficulty lies in getting bigger than the last. Each difficulty also mixes up what foods can appear so they feel distinct. Probably the most entertaining part of this stage is the fact that you just throw your opponent into space to become a planet. It becomes even more questionable when you turn them into stardust.
Race.
This request comes from the F1 Racer, who tried to roll up cars during the first game but couldn't and wants our help. Your goal is to reach 5 meters in 6 minutes. The catch is that you're on a racetrack, so naturally the Katamari is fast as well. You'll always be moving forward, so you really need to pay attention to what's in front of you while also thinking about what you should try to roll up on the next lap. It's a really fun gimmick. I enjoy faster paced games overall, so this suits me perfectly. Once you're big enough, it's fun to turn around, so all the vehicles just drive right into you instead. One neat detail about this level is all of the cousins have their own unique vehicle. Some are really funny too. Let's just not talk about Fumins. The satellite variant of the stage is as fast as possible. You start off at 2 meters with the goal of reaching 5 meters. This version actually has you start in reverse, so it's a little different in that regard. You also start larger, which is just par for the course at this point, so really it's just another solid satellite variant. Here's a fun bit of trivia. In the game Pac-Man World Rally, there's a racetrack based on this stage, titled the King's Course, with a K for some reason. The Katamari even exists as an obstacle you need to avoid. However, it doesn't roll you up, it just crushes you. The song that plays here is Katamari on the Rocks, but not the version you're familiar with, no. This appears to be the scratch vocal version. At least I'm assuming. Maybe they didn't have the budget to properly license the final version? Oh, right, the prince is also a playable racer too. He looks a little... I guess he's supposed to be the vehicle itself and he just floats above 4 Katamari that act as his wheels. I don't know, it just seems like a missed opportunity to let him ride his ducky.
Campfire.
This request comes from the camper boy, who needs help lighting his campfire. This stage takes place on the campgrounds. Your goal is to light the wood pile in the center of the map within 6 minutes. Now, there isn't a specific size goal, you just need to be bigger than the wood pile to succeed, similar to the sumo stage. The challenge here is actually staying lit. It's easier to think of this like a combo system. You need to keep rolling objects to keep the Katamari burning. If you don't roll up any objects after a while, your Katamari will go out and you'll fail the stage. You'll also extinguish the Katamari if you touch water, so be extra careful to not go for a swim. You also can't roll up living things. If you touch someone, then their duple will catch ablaze as they just run away in agony. Now, this is easily the hardest stage in the game. The more objects you roll up, the less you'll have to keep yourself aflame, so you need to keep track of what areas you haven't rolled in to truly optimize your size. Despite the challenge, this is effortlessly one of my favorite stages. I like how it slowly transitions from day to night as well. I can just smell that camping atmosphere. I also like that the cousin's antenna is on fire, so if you play a slip, his is even made of paper. Also, like the sumo stage, there are 3 difficulty levels, each with a larger woodpile to ignite, while also mixing up what objects that appear. This also means that the first 2 difficulty levels create satellites, and the hardest, a planet.
Money.
This request comes from the fundraiser, who needs help raising money to save the red pandas from losing their color. Yes, those red pandas from the opening movie. This stage takes place in the town again, and you're given 4 minutes to create the most expensive Katamari possible by rolling up objects with monetary value. That being said, even garbage is worth something, so just rolling like normal will get you by. And remember, there's no price on life. Now, it's not as brain dead as it sounds, as there are objects hidden around the map that hold significantly more value than others, like rings or even a crown. So really, this level is as challenging as you make it to be. Otherwise, it's just a cozy stage. Like, you would have to intentionally not roll up anything to fail, because in the end, the fundraiser only needed $8.50 to buy a pack of strawberries. Which is apparently the only thing that keeps the red pandas, well, red. My favorite thing about this level is probably the flea market outside of the school. I've always enjoyed looking around yard sales and seeing what kind of junk people have, so this captures that atmosphere nicely. There's also this dude with really long arms in a tree for whatever reason.
Sleeps.
This request comes from Hansel and Gretel, who heard that the king could grant wishes and naturally just want more sweets. I mean, what did you expect? It's Hansel and Gretel from the Brothers Grimm. This is one of the few requests where the fans don't even need to convince the king to help. He's just on board from the start. This stage is sweet. It takes place in this meadow where there's a gingerbread house made up entirely of candy. I mean, I guess that's how it would be normally, but since this is Katamari, that means you can roll it in piecemeal, and it's super satisfying to do. Look, there's even a witch, just like the fairy tale. Now this is a very compact area, so the 3 minutes you're given is plenty for you to 100% the stage. However, just don't forget to roll up Hansel and Gretel, otherwise you'll fail the objective. The satellite variant instead has you roll up all these wafers that are covering up a large picture. There's actually quite a few different kinds of pictures you can get. It's all random, but it does affect the dialogue the king has on the results screen. Yes, your highness, that dog did have a fabulous smile. Oh, he's a business owner too. Amazing.
Origami.
This request comes from the Crane Hat Boy, who is trying to help their sick friend by making 1,000 paper cranes. Unfortunately, they blew all around the school, and he needs our help picking them back up. Yep, it's a Sadako reference. Also, the fan calls the king sexy to win him over, which is... This is yet another stage that puts Katamari Damacy's constellation stages to shame. So while the map is recycled, it's repurposed in a far more interesting manner. I mean, 1,000 cranes is a lot, so this stage is densely packed and requires thorough exploration. That being said, you don't have to get 1,000 cranes to succeed, just a reasonable amount will do, so give it your best shot with the 5 minutes you've got. And nope. No satellite variant on this stage, but I would like to clarify that unlike Katamari Damacy, if you get stuck, you are no longer forced to drop objects until you're small enough to escape. And no, I'm not trapped here. Instead, the solution for this problem is that you can just clip through whatever is entrapping you. It also means if you clip out of bounds, you'll get to experience the Royal Warp, while the king profusely apologizes for such an egregious error. Now, the Royal Warp isn't new, it originates from Katamari Damacy, but I've always found this a very clever way to mask a problem. Now, that's not to say clipping out of bounds and getting stuck are frequent occurrences. Quite the opposite, in fact. I had to deliberately go out of my way just to make this happen. But the point is that the Katamari is no longer as frail as it was in the first game, so I'm glad they were able to button this up.
Fireflies.
This request comes from the Nerd Boy, who forgot to pay his power bill and wants to be able to study in the dark. This stage takes place at the campgrounds,
At night.
which even the king notes is a new addition to the series. The goal is to roll up as many fireflies as you can in 5 minutes, with the intent of making the brightest Katamari possible. Dashing on this stage is paramount, because some of the fireflies will fly away if you take too long. There's also this cave section in the water that's good to dash back and forth between as well. I almost forgot this is the same map as the campfire stage, just because of how much the atmosphere has changed. You were also unable to enter the water, so that probably helps too. Once you've rolled up your fireflies, simply roll up the fan and brighten up his day. Or night, I guess.
Snowman.
This request comes from the Snow Child, who claims Katamari Damacy is just a ripoff of making a snowman and wants us to go back to our roots. This stage takes place on a unique winter-themed map, with our goal being to complete the snowman, who just needs a head. Any size head will do, so don't let your Animal Crossing trauma stop you. Just roll around and take as much time as you need, because there's no time limit on this stage. And instead of displaying your current size numerically, you're given a visual representation of your size relative to the body. This stage also features a unique mechanic, as just rolling will increase your size. After all, you are rolling a snowball. It's actually possible to get stupidly large because of this, well beyond what you might expect. This is also the only stage where you can roll independently in co-op. Yeah, I suppose now is a good time to get into that. Any stage can be played cooperatively when both players approach a fan at the same time. Now in co-op, you actually share a single Katamari, so you must roll in tandem to succeed. So if you want to go forward, you both need to press forward on your control sticks. If you want to turn around, you both need to push the sticks in at the same time. And naturally, if you fall out of sync, then the Katamari will struggle to move. You also move much faster when you are both in sync compared to just rolling alone, which also means on the racetrack stage, you can get so fast to the point that it's difficult to control. Now, I will admit, it is clunky, but the idea is that you need to frantically point out where you want to go or what you want to roll up. It gets exhausting, but I don't know, it just has a unique appeal to me, but I know it's not for everyone. For whatever reason though, the Japanese and even European version has an on-screen indicator for what each player is doing, while the Western release removes this. which is very strange. Anyways, the snowman stage is the only exception, because you both have your own snowball to roll. Whoever is larger becomes the bottom, and whoever is smaller becomes the head. And it works really well. You just roll into each other when you're ready to create a snowman. Fun fact, this map was actually repurposed from the original Katamari Damacy, where it went unused. There's a website called NoClip, where you can actually explore this map freely along with maps from other video games. Check it out if you're interested.
Versus.
Considering I just covered co-op, I may as well be thorough and cover the versus mode as well. This request comes from the Battle Uncles, who simply want you to duke it out with a pal. This request doesn't let you make any planets or satellites, so it's purely for fun. It's basically just a more fleshed out versus mode that Katamari Damacy offered, now featuring 3 different maps: the bedroom, the town, and the world. Your goal is to either roll up the most of a specific object, or maintain control of a single object, kinda like capture the flag. Just like before, you can dash into each other to force the opposing player to drop any objects they've collected. This time around, the winner gets some treats from the queen, so that's nice. You can also drop even more pans than before.
Cows and bears.
Oh no, it's back. This request comes from the cow bear farmer, who woke up this morning to find the cows and bears had escaped their pasture, so it's up to us to get them back. This stage takes place on the racetrack, and we're graciously given 10 minutes to roll up either a cow or a bear. But because of this, it does mean there's more ways to fulfill the objective. And don't worry, all your favorites are accounted for, plus a few new additions. We've got flying cows, black bears, strawberry cows, and even bear cars. Just wonderful. There does exist an actual cow bear, but you need to get really big, and boy is it challenging. Really, this whole level is cranked up to 11 compared to Katamari Damacy. Like, all the starting points in this stage just set you up for failure. Check it out, Cowbear speedrun. This level is just mean. Like, there's no way I could have known Cowman was in this porta potty, but of course he would be, right? However, don't fret, as you can now retry the stage after fulfilling the objective without being forced to the results screen. This actually applies to every stage, so that's much appreciated. The present is also really tricky to get on this stage. You have to wait by this car wash that cycles through ejecting random objects. At some point the present pops up, so you just have to have really good reflexes to nab it. The cousin that's featured on this stage, Daisy, counts as a cow too, which, yeah, makes sense. She looks really weird on the results screen though, like it looks like they pulled her right out of Harvest Moon 64. Overall, this stage is an improvement from Katamari Damacy, but that's not saying much as I never really enjoyed this gimmick to begin with. But I do respect it, at least on a comedic level.
Friends.
This request comes from Dr. Katamari, which, according to the collection, is the friendless creator of Katamari Damacy. Friendless is right though, they're lonely and looking for more friends. The poor fella can't even play the versus mode. This stage takes place at the zoo, with your goal being to roll up as many animals as possible in 8 minutes. There's 300 animals total, so once again, a constellation-styled objective done better. Something I always found amusing is that people do not count as friends, but people dressed up as animals do? But yeah, this is another solid stage. I appreciate how much variety there is in the environment. I mean, a zoo is a perfect set piece for this objective, and since all the enclosures have to vary to reflect the animals that are featured, it just creates a really diverse layout. The satellite variant of the stage requires you to roll up 100 animals as fast as possible. The map has also been restricted so you can focus on a specific area to optimize your route. Something new to this entry is that you can actually move the Katamari while the king is talking before the timer kicks off. If you end up rolling up an object as he's monologuing, you'll actually get offended, but serves no real punishment other than guilt.
Limited to 50.
This request comes from the excited baby, who conceived a new way to play Katamari Damacy in the womb. Yeah, what? This stage takes place at the zoo again, but this time you can only roll up 50 objects. That means you need to carefully navigate the map and roll up the largest objects you can to optimally gain the most size possible. You can take as long as you need to, as there's also no time limit. It's okay. Maybe other people will get more out of this, but personally this feels like a filler level. Even the king isn't all too impressed.
Clouds.
This request comes from the Raincoat Girl, who wants you to roll up all the clouds in the skies so their field trip doesn't get canceled tomorrow due to rain. Is that not the cutest thing? This stage technically takes place in the world, but since you're suspended above the ground, it feels totally unique. You have 4 minutes to roll up as many clouds as you can, with 500 in total. Now, rolling up clouds is nothing new. Even the king notes we could do that in Katamari Damacy, but I just really like this stage. It's short, sweet, and to the point. I like how the sun starts to peek through as the sky clears up. I like that there's Oni in the sky. I like that the cousin gets a halo and a pair of wings. It's all just cute. What more is there to say?
Just right.
This request comes from the Just Right girl who wants us to make Saturn. This is basically a more fleshed out version of Make the North Star, so if you like that stage, now there's 3 of them. Just as a refresher, the goal is to make a specifically sized Katamari. The catch is that you don't know your current size, so you need to make an educated guess on when you're big enough. The closer you are, the better. And don't be afraid to take your time either, as there's no time limit. For a small Just Right, you need to make a 20 centimeter Katamari. This stage takes place in the bedroom, specifically the one used in the cleanup stage. For medium Just Right, you need to make a 2 meter Katamari. This takes place in the school. For large Just Right, you need to make a 50 meter Katamari. This stage takes place in the world. Like the sumo and the campfire, the first 2 stages are satellites and the last one is the actual planet. Why there needs to be 3 Saturns is your guess, but I'm sure it doesn't hurt.
Roll up the sun.
This request comes from the dog, who wants us to roll up the sun. Seems reasonable. Like I mentioned earlier, this serves as the main objective for this game, so now that we've made all these planets, surely we're ready, right? Well, if you have your save data for the original Katamari Damacy, you can actually import all the stars you made into this game, which will definitely give you a much needed boost. Since Katamari Damacy wasn't released in Europe, they lack this feature, but to compensate, all of the cousins get their own planets, which is just adorable. Once again, there's no time limit here, so take as long as you need to nab all your celestial bodies and go for the gold. If you're unsuccessful, try to at least create 1 planet or satellite from each stage. It's actually required to succeed, so with that out of the way, it's off to the credits. Just like the last game, the credits features an additional challenge. This time, you need to avoid being rolled up by the sun, which is actually being rolled by the king of all cosmos. It's about time he did some rolling around here. Now, surviving is one thing, but you can also take this opportunity to guide the king into rolling up all the fans and cousins too. This counts for the collection, and for most of them, this is the only way to do it, so good luck. After that, we return back to the select meadow and oh, it's Tomio Hoshino. I guess being rolled up into the moon isn't fatal. Now I just have more questions. Mr. Hoshino warns us that an asteroid is about to collide with Earth, and he needs our help. We've come this far, so who are we to say no?
Save the Earth.
Oh, wait a minute. It's the credits minigame from Katamari Damacy. Except now the camera doesn't pan out so far that we can't see what we're doing. Our goal is to roll up all of the countries so we can be big enough to roll up the asteroid before it collides with Earth. What the asteroid can appear as is actually random. It can be a boulder, this spiky rock, or even a mushroom. Well, that's a nice bonus. No, hey, it's Matsuo. He wants us to talk to him after we've unlocked all the cousins. Once you do that, he requests to play tag with them.
Cousins.
This stage takes place in the garden. Our goal is to simply roll up all the cousins as fast as possible. This is another nice extra. The stage is nothing special at this point, but I do appreciate that all the cousins are spread out in ways that reflect their personalities. Alright, surely we're done now, right?
Wrong!
1 million roses.
This request comes from the Rose, who simply requests 1 million roses. This serves as both the final stage and the most monumental request in the game. This will take you hours. Thankfully, you don't have to do it in one sitting, but it is definitely a grind, to say the least. There's 3 possible maps this stage can take place on: the racetrack, the town, and the snowman map, specifically the ice rink portion, all of which are randomly selected upon loading the stage. The ice rink is probably the easiest one to roll on because it's just a big circle. So if you put some rubber bands on your controller just right, you can leave the console on and let it roll up all those roses for you. By doing this, I was able to roll up about 200,000 roses a day. Apparently the speedrunner named Harutomo did it all in a little under 17 hours, just to give you an idea of how long this takes. Even growing up with this game, I never completed this task, but for you guys, I went the extra mile and cheated. One minor detail is that the rose actually gets larger the closer you are to the goal. Now, what do you get for collecting 1 million roses? Well, you get a unique results screen where the king is covered in roses. It also updates the loading screen, so now it's a spinning rose, and some roses are added to the select meadow. Oh, the title screen changes too, so yeah, In other words, nothing. So with the stages out of the way, let's dive into the presentation. Stylistically speaking, the game doesn't do too much to diversify itself from Katamari Damacy. In fact, a good portion of assets and sounds are recycled here. I think what sets this game apart is just how it uses those assets, either in their placement or how they're used to set a theme. On paper, Pisces and the underwater stage accomplish the same thing, rolling up aquatic-based objects, but are set apart by their theme. Pisces takes place in the same old town map as any other stage, except it's littered with fish. But the underwater stage takes it several steps beyond this, taking place in a unique map, set underwater and featuring a stronger variety of objects that personify that theme. It just adds to a more memorable experience. I also feel like there's more objects on screen at once, like levels just feel more densely packed with objects to collect. They must have really optimized this engine. I wouldn't be surprised if this was really pushing the PS2 to its limits. I also really appreciate the few stages that play with the lighting. It really enhances the mood. They clearly had fun making this game. There's a lot of times where I'm just surprised they went the extra mile. For example, a lot of the presents are unique for each cousin. Each cousin also has their own unique idle animation and sound for when they're rolled up. They're kind of like Pokemon cries. Even more objects have their own unique sounds for when they're rolled up too. They have this kind of rhythm or melody to them. They're very memorable, so they're just ingrained into my brain as the sound for the object now. Certain environments also feature noise filters on the roll-up sounds, like underwater or outer space. Oh, and we also get to hear the true voice of the king, who sounds like this.
Yeah, no problem.
Another thing that enhances the atmosphere of this game is its soundtrack. For Katamari Damacy, I feel like there wasn't much rhyme or reason for what song played on a stage, but for We Love Katamari, I feel like there was significantly more thought placed into that decision. Going back to the underwater stage, the song that plays here is Houston, which is this really mellow, laid-back theme. The electronic sounds that play throughout the track almost sound like bubbles, but maybe that's just me. Or take Sunbaked Savannah, which plays on the Friends stage. This song is a medley of all the music from Katamari Damacy, except all the instruments are animal sounds, which is a perfect fit since it takes place at a zoo. There's a part of the song that covers Katamari Mambo, which always reminded me of the music from that old Mighty Taco commercial. That's a deep buffalo cut, sorry. Baby Universe plays on the Snowman stage, which is this radiantly optimistic piece, which is just perfect for rolling a snowball without a single care in the world. Bluffing Damacy plays on the Campfire stage, which is this funky yet somber piece that perfectly complements with the stage slowly transitioning to dusk. Of course, this game does still share its off-the-wall wacky pieces just like Katamari Damacy, such as Kuru Kuru Rock, or the cover of Katamari on the Rocks by Dokaka, which is entirely done through beatboxing. The main theme in this game, Katamari on the Swing, is no slouch either. It's this bombastic Broadway-styled number performed by the returning Shigeru Matsuzaki. It also wouldn't be Katamari without synthesized voices, so Dan Don Fuga is here to deliver, acting as the theme of the King of All Cosmos. I like the second pass of this song because it adds the harpsichord. It's very regal. My favorite track would easily be Disco Prince, and by favorite track I mean of all time in the series. I think it speaks for itself. Fun fact, there's a part of this song that samples the Moon and the Prince from the original game too. I also really enjoy Everlasting Love, which plays on the racetrack stage. It's this fast tempo rock track that just pairs nicely with the stage. Something completely new is the inclusion of several orchestral pieces. They typically show up in cutscenes like the Royal Academy of Katamari, which plays during the plot summary. I also really like Big Cosmos Salon, which plays on the credits if you get rolled up. It makes me think of the music that would play on like a Disney DVD menu. Overall, I think it's a really solid soundtrack. I'm willing to give Katamari Damacy the edge here just because of how iconic it is. After all, a good portion of the tracks in this game pay homage. One interesting tidbit, on the official soundtrack for the game, there's this hidden 18th track. I'll play it now.
Déjà vu. Foca numéro Kyoku, va.
Kondo d'Azukara.
Déjà vu.
Just FYI, I didn't add that flashbang at the end, it's just part of the track. Now I'm not sure what's being said here. It sounds like synthesized French, but it could just as easily be Japanese spoken with a French accent. I was pretty young when I came across this, and it definitely startled me the first time I heard it. I ended up just downloading the OST from somewhere and burned it to a CD. So when this randomly snuck up on the end, I was definitely startled. So if anyone in the comments knows what's happening here, let me know, as I'd love to put this mystery to rest. The only other thing worth mentioning is the writing. I've littered bits and pieces throughout this video, but man does this game just crack me up. There's a lot of instances where We Love Katamari just wants to make fun of itself. It's not afraid to say it's boring, which normally would come off as self-defeating, but to me it just comes off as confident. And when I said I loved the King of All Cosmos, it's because of this game. The dynamic between him and the fans is just pure gold, and even when you think it's becoming formulaic, they'll throw you a curveball just to keep you on your toes. There's a lot less of, "I'm disappointed in you, my son," and a lot more of the king having to put on a front to keep his fans happy. It's poetic justice in a way for the prince, but it's also made more generalized because the cousins are in the picture too. That is to say, there's no unique dialogue for playing as the prince versus the cousins, so the previous dynamic between father and son had to be reworked. That all said, the king and even the fans will really let you have it if you fail. Uh-oh, it's Toho. Yeah. On top of getting a stern scolding, you also get to play this bullet hell minigame where you need to dodge the king's lasers. Each hit makes you smaller until you're so small that you're barely visible on screen. This doesn't have any long-lasting effects, it's purely just a fun bonus despite its unsettling nature. This for fun mentality extends to other parts of the game too. like how I previously mentioned that the title screen is interactable. On the select meadow, you can also push around your cousins by running into them. Or if you hold circle, you'll sing, which makes them follow you around. During loading screens, you can influence the direction of the text that is spewing out of the king's mouth with the left stick, or the direction of where the king's head will move with the right stick. The file select menu has also been further funified. Just to clarify, this same system was featured in Katamari Damacy. However, now each save file has its own sound that plays upon being selected. Na makes cat sounds because nya. M goes moo. And Ko makes chicken sounds. Here's where it gets clever though. When browsing to the collection, you may notice that they're actually cataloged. So if you restart the game and roll up each one before starting your actual save, then they'll all get added here. Just don't forget the trademark as well. It's all the small things that make a game special, you know? Throughout this video, I've laid the groundwork for you to understand what Katamari Damacy accomplished so you can appreciate what Wheel of Katamari did better. I mean, let's look at it objectively. Katamari Damacy featured 19 stages, 22 if you want to count the Eternal variants, or 23 including the credits. Now, compare that to Wheel of Katamari's 27 stages, 44 if we want to count the satellite variants, or 45 if we want to count the credits. That's a considerable bump up. But also keep in mind that Katamari Damacy only featured 3 maps, while We Love Katamari features a whopping 12. But let's not stop there. Katamari Damacy featured 24 cousins, including the prince, while We Love Katamari brings that number up to 40. Katamari Damacy featured 15 presents, We Love Katamari features 25, one of which, the bunny ears, are unlockable for completing the collection. Speaking of the collection, there were 1,438 unique objects in Katamari Damacy, but We Love Katamari dwarfs that with 2,987 unique objects. Just looking at these two statistically, there's no contest. We Love Katamari is just a bigger, more fleshed out experience. So why is it that this game is not as fondly remembered as its predecessor? Looking at the reviews at the time, the general consensus seemed to be that it was good but was just Katamari Damacy again, or that it did not deliver on the same level of originality that made Katamari Damacy stand out so clearly. Like, what? Did we even play the same game? I've never understood this argument, like, do you want Katamari to be a completely different genre? Like, listen to this.
Think of Katamari Damacy as a shouting, red-headed naked person in desperate need of a hug. This idea is wacky, but it's also exciting and original. We Love Katamari is the same shrieking red-headed thing that wants a hug, only it's got a pretty blue shirt on. See the pretty blue shirt? Now, can you see how adding a touch of blue doesn't really change much? In any event, does it make the naked yelling person more entertaining or less? More of the same good at a slightly elevated price isn't anything to disregard, especially considering the base game and all its cool is intact, but objective rolling simply isn't as exciting as it once was. Time limits and specific accumulation requirements are novel ideas, but when you've rolled up islands and clouds and entire planets, rolling fire along just isn't as appealing anymore.
Woof. I guess I'm just not sure what's expected here. Did critics pan Super Mario Bros. 3 for just being more 2D Mario? It's good old tried and true platforming, but just adding more enemies and power-ups isn't enough. Nobody said that. Of course nobody said that. Because Super Mario Bros. 3 is a masterpiece. I mean, the parallels are here. Super Mario Bros. Established the groundwork for the series. A side-scrolling 2D platformer where you need to reach the goal before the time is up. Up until 4-1, you've basically seen everything the game can show you. Every power-up, every setting, every song, and practically every enemy. But it's still fun to play because it continues to become more challenging. Katamari Damacy is the same way. By the time you've reached Make a Star 6, you've seen every map and idea the game has, Constellation or otherwise, but it's still fun to play because it continues to become more challenging as you get bigger. Then enter Super Mario Bros. 3. Now the brothers' sense of control has been refined, especially mid-air. Every level presents its own idea, even if it's just a new enemy or power-up. The level design is based around that to give that stage its own identity. At the end of the day, it's just more 2D platforming, but the game continues to show you new things right up until the end. We Love Katamari echoes this as well. Movement around the Katamari has been refined. No longer does it feel sluggish to move. Every stage presents its own ideas. Even if it's just a new way to roll the Katamari, the design or theme will be centered around it to give that stage its own identity. At the end of the day, you're just rolling things again, but the game continues to show you new things up until the last minute. Both games bring back old ideas, painting them in a new light to create the best version of them yet. So, I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, but when you both exceed the heights of your predecessor, while also injecting several new ideas and improvements, then I think that's worth celebrating. Is that not what a sequel should strive to be? What does Katamari Damacy achieve that We Love Katamari does not? Do people just prefer the vanilla approach to stage design? I guess I can see that. Perhaps some people just want to roll, get bigger, and call it a day, viewing these additional mechanics as just complicating what they loved about the original. As for myself, I'll take stage gimmicks any day. They're not all winners, but the ones that do create a far more memorable experience. And it's not that I don't enjoy just rolling, because I do, but I can only roll the same way so many times before I get bored. Now, I'm sure I'm biased to some degree, because remember, We Love Katamari is my first Katamari game. So when I got around to playing Katamari Damacy, I just remember being disappointed by how much lesser everything was. Every stage felt basically the same. Like, let's play a little game here. I'm going to hide the UI and you tell me, what stage is this? Is it Gemini, Taurus, Megastar 6, 7, 9? Oh, maybe Make the Moon? The correct answer is Gemini, but do you get what I'm saying? You could show me any stage from We Love Katamari under the same circumstances, and I'd be able to tell you which one it was. Well, with only a few exceptions. I recognize this argument isn't bulletproof, but the point is that they put a lot of care into making each stage stand on its own. So while that sense of collecting and exceeding yourself that made me fall in love with the series was present in Katamari Damacy, it wasn't refined to the degree that's present in We Love Katamari. Maybe things would be different had I played Katamari Damacy first, but at least in my eyes, the difference is night and day. And I hope to some degree you see that too.
吉田様、社長室へ。
あ、はい。あ、
あらま。
失礼します。
新ルール転がして巻き込む塊魂この春デビュー。
プレイステーション。
Sometime in August 2018, series creator Keita Takahashi ended up changing his name and profile picture to the King of All Cosmos. Except this artwork was new. It was his design from Katamari Damacy, but was much more detailed and in a higher resolution. Now this is interesting because Takahashi-san left the series after We Love Katamari, so for him to do something like this was peculiar. I mean, he had expressed interest in seeing Katamari Damacy remastered before, and was totally vague tweeting leading up to this point. So, being the speculative fool that I am, I assumed this was a teaser for something greater and spread the word. Then, in the September Nintendo Direct, it was revealed that Katamari Damacy was getting a remaster for the Nintendo Switch, and I went bonkers! Now, it did eventually release on other platforms, including Steam in case you're interested in picking it up, but just for context, this was the first activity for the series since the release of Touch My Katamari in late 2011. This was really exciting news for me. I mean, Katamari Damacy was always the weakest game in my eyes, so hopefully they'll take this opportunity to really polish and bring it up to the standards of the other Katamari games. Like maybe they'll make the cousins playable in single player, maybe they'll let us change what song plays on a stage, or maybe they'll rework the physics so that Katamari isn't pathetically frail. Spoiler alert, they didn't. But seeing as this is the only Katamari game that exists to the public eye anyways, I guess it doesn't matter. Sorry, I'm bitter. But in all fairness, it is a very faithful remaster. From what I understand, this isn't an emulation of the game, but rather a port of the game to Unity. So while not being a remake from the ground up, it does control and feel identical to the original, for better or worse. The visuals are where the most changes are. The prince and his cousins have all received new models and redesigns, some even differing from their appearance in the original and We Love Katamari, like Nickel, who went from a weird Frankenstein voodoo baby to an actual robot to a very good rectangular boy. Or Jungle, who went from army camo to reflecting his environment to now reflecting this static image, which is kinda lame until you realize it's a reference to how he appears in official artwork. The models for the Katamari have also been redone as well, and the game is now in glorious high-definition widescreen. On Nintendo Switch, the game is locked to 30 FPS, while on other consoles in Steam, UI elements like the prints, the size indicator, and certain menus are up to 60 FPS, which is weird. It's like they ran out of time or something? They also added this drop shadow that surrounds all the objects, an effect similar to what was done for Wind Waker HD. It is optional if you don't care for it though, except on Switch where they don't even give you any display options. All of the painted artwork has also been redone. Well, almost all of the artwork. While all the original models and textures are left as is, which is fine because like I mentioned before, they up-res nicely anyways. The game also ditches the English dub, so all the cutscenes are now in Japanese with subtitles.
中止中止。今日の打ち上げは中止。
Which I guess is because they used the Japanese version of the game as the base. This also means all the funny sounds that people make when rolled up are different, because those were added in localization.
Detention for you! Detention!
The only other weird thing is that some sound effects are incorrectly pitched, which isn't a huge issue, but when you hear something one way for so long, it does become jarring. The only other thing worth mentioning is that there's new control schemes. If you want, you can ditch the twin stick controls and go for a more simplified control scheme, where the left stick is used for movement and the right stick handles the camera. Or on Switch, motion controls. Neither of them are particularly good. So yeah, bummer, but I figured if Reroll did well enough, then surely the sequel would get the same treatment, right? I always kind of assumed it was a matter of when, not if, because the trailers for Reroll feature new artwork for the second cousins, even though they don't appear in the game. Why do that if you weren't planning on this from the beginning, you know? Now, I've wanted to make this video for a while, so when I saw the trademark for We Love Katamari Reroll, I knew I had to finally bite the bullet and start this project. I want everyone to know what makes this game so special to me. That way when the time comes, people wouldn't pass it up like they did way back in 2005. Now, the remaster was formally announced in the February 2023 Nintendo Direct, titled We Love Katamari Reroll Plus Royal Reverie, which is slated to release June 2nd of the same year, and looks far more ambitious than the first remaster since they're adding new content. 5 new stages where you control the king of all cosmos in his youth, being guided by his papa. Now these don't look like completely unique stages, but rather reskins of existing stages with new objectives. Hopefully they're fun. Even if they aren't, the base game should still be more than enough. They're also adding 25 songs from throughout the series as additional paid DLC. We haven't covered the rest of the games, but I'll go on record and say that they all have superb soundtracks, so this is a huge get. It also looks like they're adding some quality of life, like being able to select a fan from the list instead of wandering through the select meadow. And unlike Katamari Damacy Reroll, this game will run at a full 60 FPS on all platforms except Switch, obviously, which is very, very good. I'm not sure why they didn't give the original Katamari Damacy this kind of treatment, but hey, I'll take it. And that'll do it for today, so thank you for watching. Did you play We Love Katamari? If so, did you like it more than Katamari Damacy? I'd love to hear about your experience with the series, so let me know in the comments below. Okay, bye!